Good evening. This is becoming a Monday evening habit, isn't it? Are there any returnees from the previous debates? There you go. Very good to see. We've had great turnouts, and we've had great cooperation from the candidates, from the Coral Gables Forum, and I think that these forums have been very informative for the residents of Coral Gables, and I include myself in that because I'm a longtime resident of Coral Gables. So let me introduce, first of all, tell you a little bit about the rules. I want to introduce the most important people here, our timekeepers. They do a great job, and they are going to flash a green sign. You see green, that means there's 30 seconds left. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer questions, 2 minutes for an opening statement, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Pretty simple. When they see the green, that means they have 30 seconds left, and then once they have the red, I will stop them. And that's worked very well for us to move this along so that we can get as many questions as possible. Another thing that works well is to hold any applause. We'll allow some applause at the beginning when I introduce our two candidates, and of course applause at the end. But in between, no applause, please. So, without any further ado, I would like to introduce our two candidates. Coral Gables City Commissioner Frank Quesada and Enrique Lopez, the challenger in Group 4. Each candidate will offer a 2-minute opening statement, and who goes first will be decided by this coin toss, which Mr. Lopez was kind enough to let me borrow, so I'm going to, but it is a real quarter, so I'm going to do the flip. And how did we do it last time? Somebody will pick.
Heads.
Since it's your quarter, you pick. Is that fair?
That's fine by me.
Here we go.
Tails.
Oh my God. Tails? It is tails. So you can go first?
We should be last.
Okay. Hey, I'm doing this pro bono. I could have got a quarter out of it. All right. Commissioner Quesada will go first with his opening statement. Commissioner Quesada, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rodriguez. It really is an honor to have you volunteering to do this, so thank you so much for being here. I want to thank the residents who are here today, the residents who are watching at home, the Gables Forum for putting on this debate, which has been a great turnout, so thank you so much. You know, I've been honored to serve for the last 4 years as a city commissioner. It has been a tremendous experience, and it really has been an endeavor that I really believe the city has come a long way. You know, the reserves are the highest in the city's history. We've lowered property taxes in the last 4 years. We made some much-needed changes to our pension system in the city. And Coral Gables continues to be one of the strongest business centers in South Florida. Over 150 corporate headquarters are located here. Over 22 foreign consulates and trade offices are located here. And this is really something that is not directly attributed to my current commission, but it's really something that's been built upon for many, many decades. So I'm very thankful to have served as a commissioner. You know, we've had many great initiatives in the pipeline. We've been working diligently towards a senior center. We are currently working on enhancements to Miracle Mile. We have been working on repaving streets throughout the city, repairing sidewalks. We're making improvements to Granada Golf Course. We're also working on a sustainability master plan. We're moving forward with LED lights. We're currently conducting a test a few streets away, so when you leave tonight, you'll see some of those LED lights that we're testing in the neighborhood. We're also supporting the underline, which would bring tremendous improvements to the under area of the Metro Rail line. So we have a lot of great initiatives that we're working on, but this commission also hasn't shied down from tackling some of the most difficult issues that we've seen in the past. I mean, the pension issue before this commission took it on really was an issue that past commissions really didn't focus on as much as we have during the last 4 years. Between 2001 and 2011, our unfunded liability grew from $4 million to approximately $240 million. And thank you so
very
much.
much, Commissioner. Mr. Lopez?
Thank you, Elliot. Good evening, my fellow residents. We live in one of the most emulated and admired cities in the world, one that has lured all of us here because of its unique charm, character, community, and safety. It is our oasis. Our oasis is being challenged on many fronts that include public safety, traffic, development, parking, schools, pensions, and taxes. All comprise our quality of life, and we must sustain it now and for future generations. My opponent has turned a deaf ear to these and other issues during the last 4 years with no regard to their impact on the city. Tonight's debate will be a testament to how he has avoided the issues and will highlight why he is unable to continue in his present role. Supporting facts follow. He supported city management intentionally keeping our police force at 168 officers, below the 191 for which we have paid during the last 4 years, in exchange for an increase in the reserves without any thought to repercussions. Breaking a campaign promise to find a creative approach to our city's rampant traffic congestion. Breaking a campaign promise to reduce property taxes when in fact all tax notices reflect a greater tax amount. Breaking a campaign promise to reform pensions, an issue that remains outstanding with no clear endpoint at this time. Breaking a campaign promise to stop government wasting. Within days of his 2000 election, he voted to increase the city's debt by $22.1 million, extending the repayment timeline by 20 years for 17 projects, of which only 5 have been completed to date. Breaking a campaign promise to balance small town charm and quality of life to ensure Coral Gables remains the community we love. Through his support of developers whose projects demand significant negative zoning changes to a well-established and respected zoning code. He cannot be independent and objective due to the numerous strings tied to developers who account for over 70% of his political campaign contributions. The list continues, and more shortcomings will be aired in this debate. This election is a turning point in our city, and the commitments that I will make and keep will be shared with you during the same. One thing is very clear. I am only beholden to my fellow residents, all of you, should I be elected as your commissioner. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Hold the applause, please. Commissioner Quesada. The first question will be to you. Commissioner, the Coral Gables Police Department is down by some estimates 20 police officers. Can you explain to crime-weary residents why the city cannot keep its police force closer to full manpower when crime is a big concern for many residents?
Thank you, Elliot. We currently, as we sit here today, we have 191 sworn officers budgeted, which is the highest in city history. Currently, we have 16 vacancies on the police force. We only take 6.5% of all applicants. We have one of the stringent requirements in all municipalities in Miami-Dade County for what officers we accept. We are not going to take an officer that may get a job at some other locations. So we're not going to rush to hire an officer that we don't feel is prepared to handle the obligations and the duties it entails to be an officer in the city of Coral Gables. What we have done with the police department, we recently changed the police chief. In a September 11 meeting that I called, we really had an issue that our communication with crime in our police department was lacking. I called for that public meeting. I made the motion to name Chief Hudak, the chief, who is the chief now today. We have done a lot of things since we've put him into that position. We've increased patrols of residential streets by marked cars. We are assigning the same officers to work neighborhoods so that they can learn the neighborhood's pattern so that they can better identify criminal behavior. We've created a new assistant city manager for public safety to help coordinate efforts within the city to control crime. We've created technology updates, more license plate readers, more lighting. We're now accepting crime tips by text message, and we've invested in new communication software and hardware for our officers. We've created a police citizens advisory committee so that our residents can communicate more effectively with our police department. We've had the Smart Water program, the Judge Advocate program, and we've hired an outside consultant to talk to us and to really advise us how we can be more efficient throughout the city. We are, pursuant to an FBI audit, our crime numbers are down, but that doesn't mean that one crime isn't one too many. We are trying to be more proactive to prevent crimes, not just be there quick once they happen.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Lopez?
Ladies and gentlemen, the fact is we are doing catch-up. During the last 4 years, all of us have been paying for 191 officers. This commission, my opponent, and the commission have supported the former city manager's position of upping the reserves, increasing the reserves at the expense of public safety. This is not negotiable, ladies and gentlemen. Whereas the reserve has increased by $4.5 million approximately, the millions of dollars in losses, the fear factor in our city, Crime, by the way, yes, we have the right players, but it has not been supported for the last 4 years. The issue, we've always hired the best police officers. We've always had the most qualified. Unfortunately, now we're in catch-up mode, and guess what? We get the brunt of trying to do catch-up. An officer does not get hired and trained within months. It takes approximately a 50-month period. So let's not try to cover and say that, no, we're trying to hire the best, because for the last 4 years, we have been paying 191 officers, and in fact, only receiving 168. Not to mention fire. For the last 9 years, this city has grown by annexation, has grown in terms of buildings, more workers, more visitors, and yes, we have the same number of firefighters, 139 firefighters in our city. We cannot continue neglecting public safety in the name of financial gain, in the name of reserves. Public safety, ladies and gentlemen, is not negotiable. Our police is our insurance. There's a fear factor in our city. We have basically in our city retired residential prisoners, people who basically live in residential homes, but during their retirement years, they're basically prisoners because of the public safety component. Those are the facts. They're unequivocally undeniable. And to say that we're trying to hire the best, we've always had the best. And only in the last 4 years have we really seen this take a real deep dive. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez, let's stay on the issue of crime and police. Are you a believer that crime in Coral Gables is up or down? I've moderated 2 debates with 8 candidates, and honestly, I'm still not sure. Can you shed some light on this issue?
Absolutely. And first of all, we have the right people. We finally have the right people, but our police department is only as good as those who govern them. And if there's no overtime, we can spend $2 million on sidewalks. By the way, I really appreciate them 2 months prior to the election, keeping in mind that those millions of dollars have been sitting there since 2011, the infamous Neighborhood Renaissance Plan. Here are the stats. They don't lie. Year to date, burglary residential. Last year, this same time, last year, we had 29. This year, 32. 3 up. These don't lie, ladies and gentlemen. We did not need the FBI. By the way, our department, our police department did not lie. It was the maneuvering or the concoction of the data at the city manager, supported by the actual city commission, in terms of how we can translate that into financial gain. Is crime up? Yes. The categories are 53 categories down, 48 up. It doesn't change. We should have no categories. As Chief Hudak says, one crime is too many, and we have actually are playing catch-up. And you know what you do when you play catch-up? It's like when you're in heavy debt. You get further in heavy debt unless you really act on it. So those are the facts, and here are the stats. You can look them at gablescentral.com. These don't lie. Thank you.
Commissioner Quesada?
Well, I alluded to it in my previous response. You know, the auto thefts are down, strong-arm robberies are down, non-residential burglaries are down, theft from within buildings are down. The biggest crime that we have in Coral Gables deals with residents or business owners leaving their car unlocked at night. And typically what we see is we see transients coming through. More than 95% of the crime that we have in the city stems from those types of crimes. That has been proven by the stats that Mr. Lopez alluded to that come from our internal numbers, as well as the FBI audit. So when it really comes down to it is, how can we be more proactive? How can we continue moving forward? I supported legislation so that when an alarm goes off, the alarm company can contact directly the police department so that we can have faster responses. Look, where we are located generally in the Miami-Dade County, there are over 170 entrances into and out of the city of Coral Gables. We're going to have people driving through. We have a wonderful residential neighborhood. That's not a surprise to anyone. What we need to do is we need to make sure that our police department is being proactive, and we are providing the tools that our police department needs in order to respond effectively and proactively. Again, assigning officers to certain neighborhoods allows officers to meet the residents, allows them to learn their habits and their customs, to know who's coming and going at different times of the day. By implementing these policies, by working with our police department, by working with outside experts who have years of experience, we are able to proactively focus on these crimes and really keep these numbers down.
Commissioner Quesada, the next question is for you. Quality of life in Coral Gables has been a big topic in these debates. There is no doubt that our city is changing. It's growing, and some say losing its suburban feel. Do you think quality of life is changing for the better or for the worse in Coral Gables?
I think right now the quality of life, it's always the most important aspect of our city. That's why we moved to Coral Gables. We are an oasis in Miami-Dade County, was something that I said the last time around in my campaign, and I still believe that today. You moved to Coral Gables because you love the wonderful residential community, you love the city services, you love the police, the fire protection. That's why people move into Coral Gables. I think the most important aspects we have right now is really focusing and making sure that commercial encroachment into our residential neighborhoods. The residential neighborhoods are the backbone of this city. Yes, we do have a lot of projects that are in the pipeline, development projects that are all public record. A lot of those projects are as of right projects that are coming into the city, and we need to make sure that we are controlling traffic, we're being proactive about traffic, and making sure it's not affecting the residential community. We have recently implemented a traffic master plan that we are working on in order to make sure that we don't end up like Brickell or Coconut Grove or Miami. We don't want to be those places. We are Coral Gables. That's who we are. That's who we will always be. We are never trying to compete with anyone else. When it comes to downtown, we want to make sure that the parking situation is something that is really addressed sufficiently. We all remember growing up in Coral Gables and being able to park in front of any store on Miracle Ma and walk right inside. Now, the reality of the situation, there are more people living down here, there are more people that have found Coral Gables and love Coral Gables, so we're seeing additional foot traffic, we're seeing a lot more vehicular traffic. So we need to be proactive, and this commission has done that. You know, I have supported the other commissioners when we've talked about redoing the parking garages on Andalusia. Right now, there are just over 500 public parking spaces. We've requested that there need to be at least 1,000 public parking spaces to be proactive for any future developments that come down the road. Quality of life is incredibly important. It will always be important, and I will always focus on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Lopez?
It really hurts me, and that's why I'm running for office, because the quality of life in Coral Gables has definitely diminished. This is after 29 years. Yes, I am running for office, and not for personal ego, not for anything else but the fact that I love the city, and the direction of the city is heading in the wrong direction. Very simple. We can talk about traffic, and it is, for example, my opponent basically did make a commitment in his 2011 that he was going to deal with the congestion, traffic congestion, which we know is still there. We talk about parking spaces. My opponent is supporting a project that, as we speak, and by the way, on March the 25th, Agave has basically pushed the issue to be brought on this commission's last meeting, March the 25th, 1 p.m., time certain. This commission will be put to the test in their ability to basically accept or deny or make changes to a project, which, for starters, has a shortage of 651 parking spaces. That's for starters. That's not to add the additional 161 parking spaces that the streetscape is taking away. So right up from the get-go, we have approximately 700 plus parking spaces. We can talk also about the issue of transit, a same project which is basically demanding an increased use of our trolley system. Well, that requirement entails approximately 5 to 6 additional trolleys. Nobody's willing to pick up the tab, not the developer. So who's going to pick it up? All of us. Ladies and gentlemen, our quality of life, we need to take our quality of life back. Public safety, definitely, overriding, that's not negotiable. We need to also ensure that the traffic, we don't have traffic jams. We do not want to be at Brickell West or in mini New York City. Yes, we want vibrancy, but you know what? Why we moved to Coral Gables is because we have to pull a permit for to paint our homes because of the strictness, and that's what makes us Coral Gables. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez, the next question is for you. The city has taken steps to get a better handle on its pension obligations. Commissioner Quesada has alluded to that in his work in that regard. What further steps should the city take?
Okay, thank you very much, Elliot. First of all, this is a can that continues to be kicked down the road. This commission, my opponent's commission, has kicked it. There is no resolution, believe me, even though contrary to statements, there is no resolution to the actual pension issue. We must stop blaming prior commissions and administration, and we must take the bull by the horns. We have talked about a pension obligation bond, which is more debt that was recently posted. I am against that. We do not need more debt. We went from the time my opponent was elected in 2011, 55 million to in excess of $84 million of debt that the city have. We do not need to incur any more debt. There are issues having to do with, I'm a believer and a strong believer that I will support what we committed, what carrot we dangled to this employee family for when they started, we must honor. However, we must address the issue and we must start making changes to the pension, be it the Florida retirement system. I am not a pension expert. I am not here to preach, but I can tell you one thing. No more of the kicking the can down the road and blaming prior administrations when in fact we have anywhere, depending on what official you speak to, anywhere from a 205, 210 to 250 million funded liability. Ladies and gentlemen, that is massive. And believe me, they can tell you it was Commission X or Y or Z. We are all responsible because all of us in this room are held accountable to that. So the time has come to quit the pitter-pattering, as my sixth grade teacher would say, and let's grab the bull by the horns and let's make some things really happen. And let's not go ahead and continue kicking that can down the road. Thank you.
Commissioner Quesada?
This commission grabbed the bull by the horns. We did. We made some very difficult decisions. We had some very difficult commission meetings where we looked at our city employees, where we looked at our firefighters, where we looked at our police department, our police employees, and we made some very difficult decisions. And we were able to stop the bleeding. We have not kicked the can down the road. We have been fighting. We've implemented cost sharing with employees, which creates savings for all the taxpayers in this room. We're currently fighting the cost of living increases, and we are requiring higher contributions from employees. Those are not popular decisions to make. Those are not easy votes to walk out of a commission meeting when employees are looking at you and they have some strong words for you. It's not a position. I wish there was a pill that we can take to make that $250 million unfunded liability disappear. That's not the case. We've had to really work with the unions and really have some fights with the unions, and we've done that in the last 4 years. But there is a give and take, absolutely. There is a direct correlation in all these issues and the services of our city. For example, the last time around with the police department, we made some tough cuts for them, but at the same time, we increased their starting salary so that we can be more attractive, so that we can attract more police officers. Again, we're not going to cut back on the requirements for police officers as far as what we're going to require of them. But if we can make it a little bit better for them, a little bit more enticing to come here for a little bit better pay. So those are some of the things that we've analyzed. Again, we're working with outside consultants, with annuities, actuaries, and it really is a complex analysis. But we have not kicked that can down the road. We've made some difficult decisions that previous commissions weren't willing to make.
Commissioner Quesada, the next question is for you. Do you favor the Agave Ponce Mediterranean Village project? Do you agree with Mayor Kaysen that a project of this magnitude will be good for the city? That project, as Mr. Lopez brought up, hasn't come before the City Commission. It comes before the City Commission on March 25th. What the versions, it has changed quite a bit since I first heard about the project. Something everyone needs to keep in mind is that they can build a project there as of right. Now, my biggest concerns is encroachment into the residential neighborhood. If you look at my voting record, when it comes to commercial projects encroaching on residential neighborhoods, I'm always going to listen to the neighborhood. So I'm really going to be waiting to hear what I hear from residents leading up to that meeting, as well as the residents who attend that meeting. I watched the Planning and Zoning Board. I watched different people at different stages giving their feedback on that project. I think it's good for the city to have a project there. Right now, we've had a dead piece of property for a long time. I think it's going to be very important with the neighbors in that area to hear what their feedback is, what their wants are for that neighborhood, and what they're willing to tolerate. We hear from neighbors all the time. Somerset example is a perfect example. That neighborhood they were okay having the school, but they didn't want a school that was too big. We listened to that neighborhood, and we worked with that neighborhood, and we worked with that school that was coming in there. So
I am in favor of a project coming in there. I'm not in favor of a project that is going to overdo with density, that's going to cause traffic problems, or is going to cause parking problems, or any other issues that could negatively affect the residential neighborhood. With that project, we have to really focus on what the impact is going to be as a city as a whole. We have Merrick Park. That took a long time to really thrive, and now it really is thriving. We have our Miracle Mile that's doing a great job, and we're making a tremendous investment into Miracle Mile with about $19.6 million that we're putting into there. So we need to make sure that that project is compatible with the rest of the community, especially the residential community.
Mr. Lopez?
Thank you, Elliot. This project, Agave Project, Mediterranean Village, has been in the works for 3 years. I find it very, very difficult, and I was here in the mayoral debate, and I find it very difficult when all these participants in the commission have been very, very involved, actively involved, including the coffers, so their campaign contributions have been very well filled by these supporters. And the issue is very clear. It's density. The former Spanish Village was a project, a very elegant project by Alan Morris and Ralph Sanchez, may he rest in peace, of approximately 890,000 square feet. What you have proposed in front of the city is a 1.28 million square foot project, mixed use, of which just inside that project, 300,000 square feet of retail space. To give you a perspective, that is the amount of retail space on Miracle Mile, just 5 blocks south of Miracle Mile. The height requirements are requested to be exceeding from 16 stories to 19 stories. The parking, as I shared with you, and yes, it has changed. It was 950-some shortage in parking spaces. Now, after tremendous cajoling, may we say, by staff and resident complaints, it's now down to 651 short, with no link, no study, mind you. There's been no study done on the residential neighborhood west of the project, and including there have been representations made to those east of the project to kind of support it so that their land will become commercial property, therefore increase the value, and that can sell off. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a totally non-transparent process. 15 of the notices that were placed for this project were basically in City Hall's little notice. Now, when the former manager left, I got an immediate email basically all the great things he had done. Why don't they notify me and all of us as to attending these very important projects unless you have an interest otherwise? Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lopez, let me follow up on this issue. How would you deal with this? If you were on the commission, how would you deal with this project? Would you vote against it? Would you try to make it smaller? How do you mitigate the impact of a project like this? And also, I remember as a resident, when the Village of Merrick Park was being built, hearing many similar criticisms and predictions that it would kill Miracle Mile and so forth. Was the Village of Merrick Park a mistake in your opinion?
No, it was not, and I think it's very important, and it's an excellent question. I love it. As of right is something that is allowed by the code. First of all, I would never spend 3 years wherein the city used an outside counsel, Susan Trevarthen, to rewrite the code for that specific piece of land, something called form-based code. It's like my wanting to, in my home, in my lot, to build the Eiffel Tower. So what I do is I hire a zoning attorney and basically tell him, make the changes around so I can build the Eiffel Tower. That's an exaggeration, but that's, in essence, what was done. How would I have dealt with it? Number one, very transparent. Number two, even if I sat on this commission today, I would force it to pare it down. We cannot allow, ladies and gentlemen, this is a precedent-setting project. It's not because of I want a blank-looking lot. It's the fact is that we're adding more trouble to already existing trouble. 651 parking spaces short. No study on the adjacent neighborhoods west of the neighborhood. The fact is totally in non-transparency, claims, a lot of misnomers. I urge you to look at the project and attend the March 25th meeting, where you're going to see if the existing commission really steps up to the plate, or based on their contributions, they actually buckle. So you will see that for yourselves personally on March the 25th at 1 p.m. And the issue is, how would I deal with it? Very simply, transparently, honest, and right to the point. There is a rule of law in our zoning code, ladies and gentlemen. let's follow the rule of code. They bought the land knowing what the rules were. Why do we want to change them? I mean, I'm finding great difficulty, and with the support of staff and the support of the commission, we, in essence, have become their cheerleaders, and that is unacceptable in the city beautiful and its quality of life.
Commissioner Casala?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something because he keeps alluding to the agave donations. I haven't accepted $1 from agave, so I just want to clarify that. He didn't directly say me, but he's alluding to it. So just to be clear, I also want to be clear, Enrique Lopez actually lobbied me and this commission for less parking spaces when he was lobbying on behalf of Dade Medical College for when they were working on a project in downtown Coral Gables. So it's interesting you bring up the parking spaces. When it comes to what we have going on with the Agave project, the other commissioners, if you've been watching the commission meetings, if you've been seeing, I try to be the consensus builder in the commission. I really try to be the one who tries to get the votes to be 5-0. So I think it's going to be important to listen to the residents. I think it's going to be important to listen to anyone who comes to speak before us or give us input before we vote on that to work to where we need to be. Merrick Park, Mr. Rodriguez, as you brought up, that project actually was proposed to be much bigger than what it ended up being. And through commission discussion, they brought that down, they brought that size of that project down. So I think there are a lot of similarities between the project. And considering what was at the location of Merrick Park prior to Merrick Park being there, I think everyone can agree that it's a vast improvement. And currently what we have, the land where it is now, where the Agave project is proposed to go, is I think it'll be a welcome site, whatever project comes in, as long as it makes sense and the residential community that are going to be immediately impacted can be a part of it.
Commissioner Casada, this question is for you. Last year, the search for a new city manager in Coral Gables became an embarrassment when it was disclosed that the person who was offered the job had past problems that included bankruptcy and child abuse allegations. This was blamed on a private search firm. But what did you learn from this experience?
I learned from this experience that we really need to rely on our staff more. You know, we hired this private search firm. We have a tremendous staff in the city of Coral Gables. They do a great job. We hired that private search firm, and we were actually working very late when we were selecting the final firm that we were going to use, and we were down to 2 different others. And the individual that was selected had the best credibility, worked for the most municipalities, and he really shined through when we selected him. And it was unfortunate. After it went through and we found out that he missed some of the basics in the background search, we actually told him, we requested that he return his fee, and he did return his fee because we were so upset with the process and the way it came out. So what I learned from that process really is that we really need to rely on our professional staff. We have a great professional staff. The head of that department, Human Resources, Elsa Jaramillo, does a spectacular job. And it was really working in conjunction with her that we really should have relied on her more.
Mr. Lopez?
First of all, I'll take a few seconds. What my opponent did not tell you, that he has been the recipient of my former employer's financial gain as a result of representing my former employer in the issue that he referenced to with the shortage of parking, including along with Carlos Lago of Greenberg Traurig and having to do with the parking. So if we're going to say one part of the story, why don't we say the full story, Frank? Specific to the private search firm, yes, one of the many embarrassments, the trolley garage, the trolley route, I can go on and on. And bottom line is, they should have known this is the same private search firm who brought our former, now disgraced, former city manager. But in the haste, as much of these things, just like they're done with controlled choice and many other areas, this commission is very quick to basically not look at the details. In preparation for this meeting, for this forum, I do look at the details. I do my research, and I have to tell you, I have found a tremendous amount of errors in reports that these individuals are actually elected to look, to read, and to decide upon. The fact is, that was an embarrassment, and in conversation with my opponent and other commissioners, the bottom line is the vetting was not happening. They were quick. They just wanted to make it happen. Mind you that today we're blessed to have Kathy Swanson as our city manager, because that is someone that truly understands our quality of life, truly understands Coral Gables, and the difference between her and the other pilots who have piloted this airplane, she owns part of the airplane. And Kathy Swanson, on top of that, is very experienced and has been a stalwart in turning this vessel around. And I think you're going to see that honeymoon, that as this commission now has a real leader, not just someone that basically goes along to get them reelected. You will see that there are a lot of very positive things that are going to start happening in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. The next question is for you. What can you tell us about Dade Medical College? It's been in the news after its owner was fined for ethics violations, and it was found out that he had criminal charges in the past. It was also linked to an investigation into former Homestead Mayor Steve Bateman, who faced unrelated ethics charges. Tell us about the college and your role at the institution.
Okay. My role, and that's an excellent question, and I'm glad because I knew sooner or later that was going to surface, and in my integrity, my credibility, I will share with you. My role was as academic dean of the online program. Basically, I did not get involved into issues having to do with an ownership, the ownership, or various or any other background related to that. I executed my role. It is a for-profit college. It has an affiliate, which is University of Southernmost Florida, which my opponent and all the commission have chair-led on when it actually decided to use Coral Gables as its base. As a matter of fact, they also served as counsel and as a representative to the landlord in dealing with their landlord agreements at 166, 164, and 162 Giralda. So the fact is, it is a for-profit college. My role, strictly that of an academic dean, online education, and then when I went to work for its affiliate as vice president of academic affairs. Nothing to do with the negotiations that the reference is made to, having to do with parking issues, etc. I knew of them because they were affecting us. And you know what the solution was? We actually got parking spaces from the city at the cost of $97 per month for every one of our students. So we did things right. We did things legally. I have to tell you, please vet me. I have nothing to hide, and I'm glad. I was very proud of having been a contributor to that institution. Since September, I resigned unilaterally with no ties, and I'm going back to what I have always been very effective, which is that of consultancy. So I hope this answers and clarifies, and vet me. Ask me the tough and politically incorrect questions. I am ready. I have nothing to hide, and I owe no loyalties to anyone, but you, as my constituent, should you elect me, and Enrique Lopez, to maintain his transparency, integrity, and resident inclusion. Thank you.
Commissioner Quesada?
Yeah, thank you. I want to clarify something here. For all you law students in the crowd, Mr. Enrique Lopez's statements is the pure definition of slander. I have never represented Dade Medical College. They asked me to represent them, and I said absolutely not. So your statement is unfounded and troubling that you would come at me with that without doing your research. Dade Medical Question College was for Mr. Enrique Lopez, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Commissioner Quesada, it says here from the audience, you appointed a developer who is active in Coral Gables to the planning board. Is this a conflict of interest? Does this name the person?
Okay. I appointed an individual named Albert Perez to the Planning and Zoning Board. He has a lot of experience in real estate. He primarily does construction. That board, for those of you that have attended meetings or seen meetings or participated in front of that board, you will see that the types of issues that are discussed there are real estate focused, real estate based. That individual is also a homeowner in Coral Gables, has lived in Coral Gables for a long time. The types of individuals that really are most effective on that board are the ones that have experience in the different types of projects and the different types of initiatives in the city. Considering he had lived in the city for quite some time, he still lives in the city, and he has done work in the city. I thought he was a perfect fit, considering that he would have the experience in working with staff and understanding some of the complex issues that come before Planning and Zoning Board.
Mr. Lopez, would you like to address that?
Basically, the only person, he's not the only person that could have a conflict of interest. I think this is something more of the same of what we see in the autopilot mode. We must maintain transparency. We must maintain integrity. We must make sure that people do excuse themselves from their respective votes. If you look at some of the projects, I think you're going to find this same question being asked of other in-place commissioners, because they name these people under the auspices of experience. That's correct. But when you sit at the Planning and Zoning Board, you don't have to be necessarily an architect. You don't have to be necessarily a construction person. You don't have to be someone in the field directly. It does help. But there's a lot of business acumen and a lot of quality of life components that maybe someone who has an interest, possibility of being well served by additional projects, be it directly or indirectly involved. Believe me, there are a lot of contractors and out there and in construction companies who would love to see a lot of development. And there will be a lot of development, but there will be a lot of development that's governed by our rule of law or zoning code, not by certain codes, form-based codes and other denominations or other configurations of codes. So I think this is one of the issues that basically does impact the credibility of government, of elected officials, and this is something that's just not only to our city. It has reached a peak in our city in the last 4 years, and I think we're seeing this is very dismissive. We're not kings and queens when we're elected. We become servants, except some people do forget what their role really is.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. This question is for you. Do you support or oppose the Miami-Dade School Board policy of controlled choice? Should it remain in effect or should it be changed? And if so, how would you change it?
Okay. First of all, I'm a strong believer, and I'll be right because I like to go right to the point, that first of all, controlled choice is on its way out. And not because it's on its way out do I support it being on its way out. We should allow community schools. You don't buy a home 2 blocks from a school if you have your child sent a few miles down, down within the city. At the same time, we were the only city that actually had controlled choice in Miami-Dade County. There's been a lot of decisions made by the commission. And if you look at the January 28th commission meeting, you will find that right now the board has said you determine those boundaries because there are concerns on the Sunset Schools, the West Lab, the actual the Coral Gables School and Carver, and people are concerned about the boundaries. And if you look at those minutes, you see a very indecisive commission, basically bouncing the ball back and forth that they need software to go ahead and make those correct boundaries, when in fact it was they who generated the actual inquiry into the school system. They've had a lot of meetings, but unfortunately they've had a lot of meetings that have been late in the game. The game is not over. That issue will get resolved. We will go back to community schools, and where the boundaries are, as a matter of fact, I believe the meeting is tomorrow, the ABC Boundary Committee that's meeting tomorrow to discuss the Coral Gables schools. So again, our commission has not shown leadership in that respect. They've kind of thrown the ball back and forth. And in the meantime, who have we affected? Those families with children. And they're entitled to have their community school.
Commissioner Quesada?
Thank you. So important to note, the school board makes the decision on whether to continue controlled choice or not the city commission. We had 5 public hearings, the city commission did, before we gave our opinion on where we thought this decision should go, how we were going to push the school board. And actually, this is one of those issues that the can has been kicked down the road. When you get elected to serve here in the city of Coral Gables, every elected official will tell you that residents speak to you nonstop about the public school accessibility in Coral Gables. The controlled choice program, which I'll give my opinion, I'm against the controlled choice program. It's so incredibly difficult to know that you live next to a school and you might not end up going to that school. You might end up across town. So that's been a great piece of frustration for families for a long time. So we realized that Coral Gables was the only district in Miami-Dade County that was still being treated differently through this controlled choice. So we decided to take some action. We went before the Attendance Boundary Committee, which is a subcommittee of the school board who makes a determining factor. Again, we had those 5 public meetings. We listened to public input. And that public input that we were hearing really all stemmed from, not knowing where their children were going to go and ensuring that their children could have the best accessibility to the best schools in Coral Gables. Now, we didn't give our formal opinion to the school board until we had those 5 meetings. Then we issued a letter that the mayor and all the commissioners signed. Well, we were strong on what we wanted. We wanted to make sure siblings could attend schools together. We wanted to make sure that children were grandfathered when controlled choice was lifted. We wanted to make sure that the Sunset Elementary Magnet Program applied to all the districts in Coral Gables. That's one of the best magnet schools in the country. We want to make sure that we still have access to that. We want to increase the magnet program at West Lab Elementary, which is very desirable. There are 250 Coral Gables families on that list.
Thank you, Commissioner Quesada. This question is for you. Who should pay for the $20 million Miracle Mile streetscape project? Right now, the breakdown is 50% property owners on and around Miracle Mile and 50% from the city. Is this fair to the business owners and to residential property owners on the mile, or would you like to see a different funding formula?
Currently, of the approximately $19.6 million project, the way we are funding it, just a little bit more than 50% of that is coming from the city. The rest is being passed on, the way the current vote is, to the property owners on Miracle Mile, as well as there's one residential tower there as well. You'll notice when you go back in the records, you'll see the City Commission that I believe we passed that unanimously. 2 of us have brought the issue up on several occasions after the fact that we don't believe the residents that live there should be paying for it. Because as it is, taxpayers are paying for it for any city portion, that 50% city portion that we have that we are contributing to it. I'll tell you, I wasn't 100% happy with the way that it passed. I would have preferred to have those residential owners not be involved, not have to foot some of that bill. The reason I voted for it is a technicality in our procedure so that I can bring it up later on and so that we can discuss it again in the future. So I will be bringing that up again to make sure that those residential payments, even though they are a small amount, I think the greatest benefit is going to be really received by the property owners and the businesses there. We think once we fix up that Miracle Mile and it's comfortable to walk on, there are no more cracks on the street. We have some bigger, fuller trees giving you shade as you're walking down the street or having a cup of coffee outside, that the businesses are really going to be the ones that reap most of that benefit, and those commercial property owners. So I want to make sure it's fair and equitable. When you compare it to other municipalities throughout the country, we hired an outside consultant who's done 500 of these throughout the country, and he told us the vast majority of the time the structure is the exact structure that we used. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez.
This was another City Commission rushed decision. Initially, it was an $18 million being borrowed. And within a week, with minimal or no input, it was increased to $25 million. In a second commission meeting, which basically no process and minimal, if any, notification. The real issue here is that study, and I did spend a lot of time prior to that, it is not fair to have the businesses or the property owners foot that 50%. It is too late. Even he acknowledges that he could have voted or would have voted differently. But it is too late. It is moving forward unless somebody follows a suit like in the Giralda streetscape component. However, it is very unfortunate that a lot of the abandoned deterioration of the infrastructure, which we should have kept up, it's like almost painting the house, painting your home, etc., was not kept up intentionally, and then it was tacked on as part of the streetscape infrastructure improvements. That is not a very fair business practice. It further loads Miracle Mile, the merchants on Miracle Mile. If you walk Miracle Mile on any given day, you will see between 20 and 22 empty storefronts, ladies and gentlemen. That is not the Miracle Mile that we've known. You look at the sidewalks, you look at the benches, they're rotting. There are a lot of things that don't make that Miracle Mile part of the city beautiful. And what we've done is stacked on an assessment to these business owners, and then what do? We don't even give them input or a link to another project which would basically run them right out of the ground, which is the Agave project. And to just clarify, the Merrick Village project, yes, it was 900,000 square feet. Yes, it was 3,800 parking spaces, and they all complied with our requirements. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez, candidates have spoken out about poor lighting in some Coral Gables neighborhoods. Can you name specific areas where lighting needs to be improved?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make reference to the fact that as part of the Neighborhood Renaissance program, 4 years ago, there's $1 million of street lighting, historic street lighting, that has not been exercised. As you may recall, I said there were 17 projects, only 5 have, and I said I gave them more credit than was fact. 5 have not been completed, they have been started. First of all, we're trying to find lighting as a solution to the crime issue. First of all, I'm a believer that lighting is, for example, I live on Sorolla. Sorolla is, you could say, not a very well lit street, but it also, I like the fact that I do leave my porch light on and allow neighbors to do it, because we want to maintain that quaint environment. We do not want to be a Miami-Dade County sodium light type of scenario in Coral Gables. So we pretty much look to that as a complementing of, number one, police presence. Very important. People do not speed when they see a police car. They really don't worry about cameras or license card readers. But we need to actually start doing what we are paying debt for. We're paying debt payments on $22.5 million, which my opponent agreed to within days after being elected. And one of those projects is $1 million in street lighting. Now, in addition to, we need to also shore up and step up to the plate and quit our cozy relationship with the utilities. Our city commission has a very close relationship with Florida Power and Light, and by the way, we do pay them. I was the chairman of the Utility Service Task Force, and boy, did I get heat for that one. But you know what? I am proud and very glad that I did, because in the process, I did uncover that there are a lot of things our city does not do. We do not monitor the lights that are out. So the solution, before we go out and kind of make this a bright LED Disney World type of scenario, is to, number one, let's have our vendors go ahead, in this case FPNL, which we pay monthly for, lit or not lit.
Thank you. Commissioner Casada?
So most people don't realize that FPL maintains a large percentage of the lights that we have in our city. So when you see a light go out, we can't just send someone from public service over to change that light. That seems too logical, right? So we were recently in some litigation with FPL. We were one of the few municipalities that actually sued FPL by trying to impose the power lines over US 1. FPL is not a fan of us. You can ask them. During the negotiating sessions, one portion that I negotiated with FPL is for them to release the maintenance of those lights to us. Currently, we pay $22 a month for each one of those lights that gets maintained. We could do it internally, or we can hire a private contractor for a fraction of that amount, and we can guarantee that light bulbs are replaced within 3 days. Yes, there is a direct correlation with street lighting and crime, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that the streets are lit up as much as possible. The reason we're doing the testing for the LED lights right now is to ensure that when those lights last longer, cost 60% less, we are going to have less lights out. That's going to do wonders for the safety in our communities, as well as ensuring that our costs are maintained lower. Also, Mr. Lopez keeps on bringing up the additional debt. The additional debt that we took on, those $22 million, we took it at a 2.5 interest rate as compared to a 5.5% interest rate that we had in the past. And yes, we did take on an additional $22 million to improve the city. We have a senior center that's coming because of that. We have an additional 3,000 trees that are coming into the city. We are improving the parks like Ingram Park, that you've seen some renovations, and other parks that are coming throughout the city. And also at the same time, our reserves have grown by more than $20 million. And yes, our tax rate has gone down. You're paying more in taxes, the actual amount, because your property values have gone up, but your rate has gone down.
Okay. Commissioner Casado, this is a two-part question. Is it possible to hold down fees for seniors on fixed incomes? And is it possible to monitor street lights that are left on during the day?
I'll take on the second portion first, since it ties into the previous question. To monitor it during the day, I think we've taken a crucial first step, and that first step is taking control back of the maintenance of those streetlights. We were working with FPL. We did a streetlight survey to find out all the poles in the city. Believe it or not, in the past, commissions didn't know exactly every location of the streetlight. So we worked with FPL, and we did a survey of all the lights and what was out, and we had there's a pretty big Excel list with all those lists, and we're working with FPL to make sure that we can maintain those. Moving forward, because we will either be doing it in-house or working with a private contractor, regardless, we want to make sure it's the best service possible. We will be able to monitor that better. As far as reducing fees for seniors, the finances of the city, it is quite complex. I mean, we do have our reserves that we set aside for, really, it's something I would be willing to consider, absolutely. It's the first time someone's actually mentioned it to me. So I would love to meet with that person later on and see what we can discuss and bring it before the City Commission to have a more comprehensive discussion.
Mr. Lopez?
At 2.5% or 5%, $22.5 million is debt. We have been making payments on that debt for the last 4 years, of which we have only commenced on 5 of those 17 projects, and I want to re-stress that. Reference the fees, and I'm glad that my opponent finally, despite what his brochure says, finally realizes the difference between tax millage rate and tax reduction, because in his brochure he makes it very clear that we have reduced the taxes. For the first time I hear my opponent basically saying that is the millage rate, and he is correct, but our taxes have not gone down. Why? Not only have our value assessment values gone up, but also the fact of the fees. And yes, if you look at your fire fee, and we're one of those cities that charges anywhere from a fire fee that was initially 100, 50, 100, 70, is now at 70. So those fees start eating you up. There are additional recreational fees, golfing fees, and yes, you can say they're usage-based. We also have the privilege of having a emergency medical services fee for $500. I am a believer that fee should go away for residents, and for non-residents, we should tack it on. The perception is insurance company will pay for it. Well, that's not necessarily true. So yes, I am in favor of, number one, retaining the people that made Coral Gables, our seniors, the people that made it its quality of life, that right now not only are they living in residential prisons, but the fact that they're also finding themselves basically almost run out of the Gables by the fact that the taxes and the fees are eating right into them. So yes, I'm a firm believer in reducing the fees for the seniors. And can we monitor the deadlights, the street lights? Let's go ahead and at least make them work first before we can start monitoring, because right now we're going to be very unpleasantly surprised as to what we're not doing and what we're paying for at $22 a month. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez, let me follow up on the issue of fees. In our first debate, we had one candidate who proposed totally eliminating the garbage fee. There wasn't, I couldn't hear anybody else agreeing with him in our first debate, but what would your position be on that?
Well, let's be realistic, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I do not know enough about the garbage fee and the impact. This is about a budget. We're running a business. The difference is that in a normal business scenario, what you find is if we don't sell the product in the real world, we basically go bankrupt or go out of business. We have to shut down. In government, they have something called increase of taxes, or fees for that matter. So the bottom line is to sit here and say, I want to redo this without seeing the impact on the other areas that it's going to impact is very irresponsible, and you're not going to get an answer for me. I respect that candidate's position. I like to think he has done his homework. But the bottom line is very simple. We're looking at prioritizing what's priority. $2 million in sidewalks is not going to improve my public safety. $2 million in sidewalk and no overtime for the police department does not cover the vital components that comprise our quality of life. So before we make any hasty decision, I'm not saying that candidate has or has not, I will not, and one thing I will do the research just like I did, and I stand behind everything I've stated in this forum today. I will not make hasty decisions or based on the opinions of a city manager or opinions. Yes, I will listen to them, but I will also come to my own independent conclusions as to the work that has been done and the numbers, etc. This has been the problem with our commission today. Basically, they're rubber stamps. And ladies and gentlemen, I think we have seen the results. They're not good.
Commissioner?
You know, when it comes to the waste fee, I haven't fully heard that candidate's position on it, so I really can't comment on it. What I'll tell you is, you know, you moved to Coral Gables for the city services. You know, we all love to have the garbage men and women come behind our house and pick up the trash so we don't have the unsightliness in front of the homes. You know, we pay a premium for that. We do. There are other municipalities, something we have discussed, there are other municipalities that you can actually buy bags rather than paying the $7.29 per home that you pay. So I want to say there's a municipality in Fort Lauderdale that we've discussed on the record that they actually, you can purchase the bags at a certain cost from the municipality, and you can go from there. It's something that, you know, we've discussed, we haven't moved on it because people are so happy with the waste services that we have in our city. I just want to clarify a few things. You know, so the funds that we use for the sidewalk, the $2 million, is not applicable to the police budget. It's two different sources of money. If you're borrowing money for your operating costs, that's a sure way of financial failure. So those monies that we've borrowed, we're doing it for infrastructure, for quality of life purposes. We're not doing it for purposes to pay our operating costs because that's a sure downfall every time. And the overtime for police, he's saying we don't have enough, that was actually a move on the pension reform. Believe it or not, when you look at the unfunded liability, the police officers can tie that in, and actually someone who's making $70,000 in their last 3 years could make $100,000, and all of a sudden the pension obligation for the rest of their life is coming out of our pockets. People don't realize it, but our pension obligations, we pay about $26 million a year. Out of that $26 million, about 80% of that is coming from retirees. Because in the past, they didn't make those changes. They weren't aggressive enough with those types of intricacies when it comes to the pension reform that we talk about. Again, we're working with the unions, we're working with the city to make sure that we move forward with these fees. And one thing on the EMS fee, it costs $366 for every call.
Thank you. Commissioner Quesada.
Yes.
The Central Fire and Police Station is having severe structural problems. What is your plan to address this situation, and how would you pay for it?
So I think I was the first commissioner that actually went out to the fire stations to look at the issue. That fire station was built over 43 years ago. And, you know, as the moment the problem started, other defects began to manifest over time. So because of the financial issues that we've had in the past, we didn't have the reserves available, you know, really prior to 2011. The funds really weren't there. Right now, what we're doing, the conversations that we've had, is we're looking for locations to either, you know, we've done an appraisal of the property. We're looking at what it's going to cost to repair the property, and we're also looking at other locations so that we can be more responsive. You know, those are the preliminary conversations that we've had on the dais. But again, police and fire is one of the most important aspects of our city. It's one of the main reasons why we live in our city. So we need to make sure that their facility is the right type of facility that they deserve, that we deserve, so that they can perform their duties in the proper fashion. So we are currently looking at the different options that we have. I would be rushed to tell you that we have a plan in place. We're not going to rush into that decision. You know, we want to make sure that we have all the consultants that, you know, who've given us the feedback on the engineers and what they're telling us what we need to do the building. So we'll be making that decision, and I will be working hard to make sure that our police and fire have the best possible station for them.
Mr. Lopez?
I just heard my opponent talk about that the funds were not there in 2011, but we did indebt ourselves $22.5 million, for example, for a project at the Pond Circle that included some type of fountain of youth, and I'd love for you all to read it because the creativity factor is very, very good. What it shows here is a clearly disconnect between what is priority, which is public safety, and what is in essence what embellishments. And yes, we all love to have the shiniest car, but on the baseline, I like to have a car. Having said that, stations 1, 2, and 3, it's more of the same. It's a neglect of the infrastructure. One of the stations actually water seeps in. We have annexed land to our city. Our response time has increased 90% of the time as 2013-14 from 7 minutes 30 seconds to 8 minutes 12 seconds. Well, those seconds, at my age at least, it can make a heck of a difference whether I am saved or I actually are not saved. So what we're finding here is a mix of priorities and over inversion of priorities, wherein the decisions are not made with any real thought process. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, 22.5 million, Fountain Youth, a tennis center, the Segovia Circles. What's more important, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow residents? Our public safety, the livelihood of those who are going to respond to us, when we in fact have our equipment exposed to the elements, because we cannot put our equipment inside when our rescue units are out by Merrick Park. I think you all are smart enough. One of the things, we're one of the most educated cities, and I know you're smart enough to determine that we must prioritize what's important in our lives and our quality of life. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lopez, I have a fairly long question that's a statement with a short question at the end. I'm going to read it. All the candidates promise us that each of them is the better choice to keep our city safe, but none of them is talking about what we can do to face the problem of higher sea levels due to global warming. If we follow the steps of cities like San Francisco, Portland, and New York, which are trying to reach zero garbage to eliminate methane gas and cut the same with composting, making organic fertilizer, which improves the soil and we can sell to local farmers, creating revenue for the city, other side, what should they be doing to lead us to reach the goal of zero garbage? What are you going to do about this?
Very realistic. That's a very, very good question. Ladies and gentlemen, we have failed. We have fallen short in addressing what's basically reality. As a matter of fact, we have Dr. Wanless there, who's a university microbiologist who's been ringing that bell for a long time, and only in recent years has that been taken into reality. It starts off by, number one, in our city we have no mandatory recycling. What the reasons why or why not? So are you really real about the Green Task Force or being a green city? I have here a list of the board vacancies. The Green Task Force, all vacant since 2013 term through 2015. That means that's really not a priority to this commission. And by the way, each one, city manager and every one of them has a seat that they can assign. That I happen to have served on that board when it started, and when we started asking the politically incorrect questions with the real issues that cities needed to do with respect, our board was made to report to the city manager, who basically thought that we were a real pain, and in the process, basically, people got tired, and that's why you see vacant. So there's really no commitment on the part of our city. Sea rise, the rise of by waters is very real. We're talking about that for every foot that the water rises, you have a water moving inland, anywhere between 500 and 2,000 feet. We also have a very desperate infrastructure where we talk about being tough on the utilities, when in fact, in the southern end of our city, we force our residents to build these homes feet above ground, actually sea level. But the infrastructure, the power companies, the actual phone companies, and all the pumping stations are at the ground level. Now, does that make sense to you to build a home that's supposed to be sustainable, actually X number of feet, but the rest of the infrastructure is basically could be eroded, not eroded, but actually overcome by water? It doesn't make. So there's a lot of disparities. We don't have a commitment. We need to.
Commissioner Quesada.
Yeah, a few points. So the Green Task Force, and I'll get to I'll get to that question in a second. But the Green Task Force, what we decided to do when we saw we had a lot of involvement at the beginning, and we saw a lot of people have a lot of different great ideas. But that board was the focus really wasn't there. So what we did is we went out, we brought in an outside consultant to do a sustainability master plan to give us a focus to really implement different types of technologies that we really could utilize as a municipality, both for residents and as a city as a whole. We've implemented the PACE program. We were one of the first 5 cities back in 2012 to implement this. If you're a homeowner and you implement green technologies into your home, you get credits. And there are certain benefits, and it works with JP Morgan Chase. Again, we were one of the first 5 municipalities. Most people don't realize this, but we have over 44 miles of waterfront in Coral Gables. So we are on the front lines of this issue, and Dr. Wanless is really at the pinnacle of that nationwide. So we're honored to have him living in our city. We as a commission, we've discussed this item several times, before, in public settings where we've discussed that we want our staff and our city commission and other members that are involved in this process to be meeting with Dr. Wanlis and to meet with the other cities. I know that we have spoken with the mayor in public meetings, and he's attending meetings with other mayors to see what we can do at a local level and what conversations we need to be a part of.
Okay. Commissioner Casala, we're running, this will be one of our last questions, then we'll have the closing statement. Commissioner Casala, what clients do you or close family members have that might create conflicts of interest with commission business? And what is the dollar amount of campaign contributions that you have received from builders and developers?
There was a project that came before us. I do real estate litigation. I'm an attorney. I primarily focus on real estate litigation. I have a client that brought a project before the city. I wasn't working on that client. He was being represented by another attorney in my firm. Even though I wasn't representing him, I recused myself from that vote. And as far as donations from developers, I don't have the exact number in front of me. Mr. Lopez said it was 70% earlier. I'll assume he's correct on that. But I'll tell you, I'm thankful for anyone who donates to my campaign. Residential property values are up, commercial property values are up, reserves are up, the taxes are down, crime is down. Of course, individuals whose businesses rely on the stable leadership and increasing property values are going to donate to my campaign. So I'm very thankful that they actually do, that they believe in me and the work that we've done. And if you've ever been to one of my fundraisers, you've heard me say during my speech that a donation to my campaign is supporting good government, and that's it. So I stand by that, and that's about it. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez?
Obviously, I have stated what I have stated with respect to political contributions. For my person, I cannot accept a political contribution and then look you straight in the eye and not expect, especially in such a lucrative business, in such a lucrative city as ours is as developers, real estate companies, real estate attorneys. And it's great that my opponent has those relationships. However, I am not going to pass judgment on them. I'll let each of you take a look at the financial reports and do some Googling on the sunbiz.org and see the relationships by and between those various entities and what they're seeking, and link them to their various reports and projects that are going on. And I think you'll be able to make some real solid, sound conclusions on your behalf. It is important, one of the transparency in keeping a transparent government, that you have no master. And in our commission, there are several masters who basically can, or influencers as they like to call them, that actually through to political contributions. No one influences this person. The only one that will influence the person that is speaking right now is any one of you. Not a certain business that has a financial gain, not someone who wants to change a project to build the Eiffel Tower in a residential lot. So that's the realities of it, ladies and gentlemen. Transparency in government is lacking. It happens to be Sunshine Week. And as we speak, we have our state legislature trying to go ahead and basically close the doors of transparency, close the door of information access. Try sometime to get a public records request from our city. I'm still waiting for some that I made 3 months ago. And only when you start pushing, would you like to see it? It costs 50 cents a copy. Ladies and gentlemen, believe me, you can follow the audit trail and it will tell you a lot where you wind up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. And now we have reached the time for our closing statements. Each candidate will get 2 minutes. And since I believe Commissioner Casala was first with the opening statements, this time around, Mr. Lopez will go first with the closing statement.
Thank you, Elliot. My fellow residents, today you have heard many facts and reasons as to why my opponent is unable to continue to fulfill his present role. He has fallen short in his ability to meet campaign promises, as well as in his stewardship of our city's finances, operations, and public safety. Our quality of life cannot be compromised by those who choose to follow, are not independent thinkers, and are beholden to many interests. As your commission, you will know where I stand at all times, always representing your interests, being transparent, never compromising my integrity, and ensuring you have a say in all decisions that impact our quality of life. Yes, I will answer your telephone calls. I will respond to your emails and listen to any your concern that you consider important. I will not be a dismissive elected official rather a servant of yours. My commitment to the city that I love is not compromising any way by anyone. I commit to ensuring we stay as the most emulated and admired city in the world. As your commissioner, I commit to non-negotiable public safety, ensuring we staff public safety as our needs demand, ensuring adherence to our strict and respected zoning code, addressing our city's rampant traffic congestion, a high return on tax investment by using our taxes on visible and quality of life components. No play on use of words, millage rate versus tax reductions. Straight honest talk, no double talk. Crisp, right to the point answers and solution. No more kicking of the pension can and finding a mutual solution for all. Stopping the continued increase of unjustified debt. Supporting our present manager to ensure maximum productivity and effectiveness at all levels. Ensuring projects for which we have been making debt payments since 2011 and are completed. Not lending a deaf ear to your concerns. Your vote for me will make a difference in this historic point in our city's proud history. Let us take control of our destiny and not compromise our quality of life. Let us get involved like never before. Let us get out and vote on April 14th. Let us be us. Let us be Coral Gables. It's all about our quality of life. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Commissioner Casala?
Thank you again for your time. It's been a pleasure this evening discussing the facts. I just want to say, moving forward, what I think the most pressing issues are. First and foremost, like usual, it's protecting our residential neighborhoods. I had a very close relationship with Bill Kurdyk Sr., and he would always say the same thing. We have a great downtown, but the base of who we are our residential community is our residential community. That's really what my focus has been. I always listen to the residents. You will see that my votes speak to that. And it's also ensuring that our infrastructure projects are completed correctly. We have about 15 city initiative projects in the pipeline. Again, a few of those have been completed. A few others are going to be completing once we finish with the public meetings and we get all the full residential input that we need. Now, it's also important to maintain a high quality of city services. People move to Coral Gables because of our city services, because of the waste management, because of police, because of the fire. We need to make sure we give them the tools to probably serve us and our needs. And also controlling our finances. Again, our reserves are higher now than they've ever been in the past. We have a lot of ability to do many different things now, but we need to be careful not to squander those funds and make sure that we're making the right sound financial decisions as we move forward. With that, thank you for your time, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. I'd like to thank both our candidates. I'd like to thank the Gables Forum for organizing not just this, but the two previous debates. That's right. Round of applause for the Coral Gables Forum. Great job. Great job by our fabulous timekeepers who are perfect. Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure for me as a Coral Gables resident to be informed of what's happening in our city because we all take great pride in it. So thank you very much, and don't forget to vote April 14th.